පියාණන්ගේද පුත්‍රයාණන්ගේද ප්‍රාණයන්ගේද නාමෙන් ආමෙන්. සෞභලතියතුමනි ඔබ හමුවේ පිදෙනා අපහාපගේ පිදුමද වේවා ඔබිනා රොටිබින එයි සිසුනට හෙයි මුළුලෙසිනා අපට සමිනි ජේසුනි හෙලි වරුපෙතිනා දැතේ දහඩියෙන් ගත් කල මහපොළොවෙන් පුදනෙමු දෙවිඳුනේ පිළිගනු කරුණාවෙන් උදගෙන රෝටිද සමගින් නිදි ශලවදුනෙන් වේවාපට ජීවනයේ පැන්ව බොදුන්. It was during 75 to 79 that the theology of liberation started flowering, the Asian theology of liberation. Because people think that we copied and adjusted Latin American theology of liberation. Actually, my paper with which I launched Asian liberation theology was presented in 1979. That is about 5 years after I started Tulana. By that time, I was also, Father Arupe gave me not only Gregorian University, but also Manila, where I met 70 to 90 Asians. So I was exposed to the whole of Asia. And so by 79, I had a good feedback and also traveled about. Each time I went to Asia, I traveled about in various countries and picked up what I could call the characteristics of Asia, common characteristics. So that by 79 I was ready to present a paper which actually was a breakthrough for two reasons. First, the Latin American theology of liberation started with a movement for socialism, probably in the 60s, very incipient movement. It was not highly organized, but it started. And then came Vatican II, more or less at the same time, 60s, with three emphases. One is emphasis on the local church. So, secondly, on the poor. Third was biblical, emphasis on the scriptures. Now, these three things had a tremendous effect in Latin America with the coming of the socialist movement, So, the local church started taking the teaching of Vatican II seriously and applied it to the local. And the problem of the local church was extreme poverty. Therefore, they started these Bible study groups, little ecclesial communities, reflecting on the Bible scriptures. And that's how liberation theology came, not a Marxist reading of the Bible. I would say a Lectio Divina, reading of the Bible. Lectio Divina is a classical term for reading of the Bible together as a church. So the community started reading the Bible, interpreting in the light of their poverty. And since the Bible is started as God of the poor and the oppressed, it's a kind of a history of an oppressed people, it somewhat clicked with the situation of Latin America. And that's how liberation theology started coming. In 1970s, Gustavo Gutierrez wrote that famous classic. Came to Asia somewhere in 72, 73. Actually, it's the 80s that they really studied it. So that you can't say Latin American theology directly influenced Asian theology. By that time, the Minjuk theology has come in 1970s. It's a liberation theology from Korea. Then Dalit theology was coming in 1977. So it was a simultaneous movement. And I always say the most Christian continent and the most non-Christian continent. That's where the thing started actually. Whereas Africa, they were busy with inculturation. So 1979, in my paper, I avoided the inculturation liberation thing, that binomial, which became very popular at this time. We must be enculturated, but at the same time we must think of liberation. And this created a lot of tension at that time, because there were enculturationists and liberationists. They were against each other. And the fact that in the early church there was an enculturation in the Greco-Roman mores, social mores, which completely destroyed the radical nature of the Bible, the Semitic mind. So they were afraid. So there were groups who were opposing enculturation, presenting liberation as an alternative. There were others who were insisting on enculturation. That was the moment I entered the picture, and what I did was, I left both items out. I said, this is an endless debate. This is not going to create a liberation theology. I said the context of Asia has to be taken, and I removed that enculturation liberation paradigm and introduced religiousness and poverty. So Asia's greatness is in religiousness. The greatest, the most powerful world religions have their fountain here, and still the fountain is there. Still it is producing this, constantly recreating these religions. At the same time, Asia had the biggest number of poor. So we have this problem. There is poverty and there's religiousness. And I brought out the liberative and enslaving aspect of religion, as well as the liberating and enslaving aspect of poverty. Eventually poverty versus economic poverty. And on this side, the religion becoming a kind of intoxicant rather than a stimulant to justice and peace. This kind of conversation came as a result of my paper, and there was a polarization. Some interpreted my attention on poverty as a focus on liberation, and my attention on religiousness as a focus on enculturation. And this confusion I had to fight for 2 years. This was the Asian consultation of the ITWAT in 1979 in Sri Lanka. The second one was in Delhi. Again, I was asked to give the input, and there I was more explicit and brought concrete examples of poverty as well as liberative movement in Asian religions, ancient times. The Mahanubhava movement and the Bhakti movement that came up to Gandhi. You know, this liberation movement, even within religion, against caste, against exclusion of women from religion, and so on. So we had a very good conversation, and I remember Gustavo Gutierrez at the end of this whole thing getting up and said, right, even for us, religious and poverty. That was the end. Gustavo Gutierrez saying that, getting up, yes, it holds good for us. Because there also, they were poo-pooing the indigenous religions. And they had a negative view of that. There is also liberative dimension in popular religiosity. So that was a tricontinental meeting, and also the Africans. We got into a kind of a consensus. Then onwards it was smooth sailing. Liberation theology became normal. In fact, Father Forbes, many others, including M.P. Joseph, who is writing a history, has pointed out that this paper was the origin of contemporary Asian liberation theology. That was the where I brought cosmic religiosity, which was never thought of. And we had a little conflict between the South Asian group and the East Asian group. They were more Marxist analysis with the religion as opium of the people. We in South Asia were more coming out of the other dimension. Then the Latin American representative got up and said, told the other group, we didn't come to hear a repetition of our theology. We came to learn something from Asia, and this paper has given it. With that, the situation, first change took place. Then, of course, after 2 years of controversy, 1981 in Delhi, we came to this conclusion. Since then it was, I would say, smooth sailing. This paradigm worked, and within this paradigm various other small theologies began to crop up. So actually my traveling abroad and staying in Tulana, I was in a Buddhist milieu, and constantly with rural students who were in the university, constantly coming with us. And at that time I also started giving social analysis to university students, Mahavidyalaya boys, teachers from various universities. So we had no place. We didn't start with buildings. Whatever the place we had, we used it for everything: eating, drinking, sleeping, seminar, everything. It was a very, I would say that was a good beginning. We didn't have organized way of doing things. It was very unorganized, but we were working together. These are the things that sort of, I would say, nourished me, that nourished me. Then, of course, I started working more on it, how to find cosmic religiosity. This is a thing that was rejected by many as superstition, nature worship, and so on. So I brought what they call creation theology through this. So many people criticize, where is creation theology in your theology? I said cosmic religiosity. It's a this worldly religious thinking, this worldly but religious. That's why I avoided the word secular. It is this worldly, non-religious. So the seculum also means world, cosmos also means world, but by using cosmic, we managed to. And there was a little criticism from some Indian theologians about this word cosmic. Superstition is the Upanishads, these are the things that bring theology and so on. There was a bit of criticism, but somehow or other, Redemptoris Missio, the Pope started using the term cosmic and metacosmic thing. Since then it became the common parlance of the official Catholic Church. It is there. So now with cosmic religiosity, I avoided another dimension called creation theology. It's part of Asian theology because this is the grassroots level theology that comes from the nature, what we call nature worship. Actually, it's not nature worship. It is sensitivity to nature. It's an eco-friendly spirituality of the people. So that's how the theology of liberation came. The seed fell many years ago during Vatican II. It began to grow there. After the ETWOT 2 meetings, it became it spread everywhere. That paper was published in Africa, in Latin America, all the continents. It appeared in many journals, and many even in Asians in other countries began to respond to this. When I was already studying theology in Europe, that is in Naples, my theology coincided with Vatican II. There was a revolution in our theology. Especially in my final years of theology, I was involved in a wide apostolate and in the intense study of the Bible in Hebrew. Here I went into the language and entered into the Hebrew mentality. Then together with that, I was working in the hospital, especially finally as a priest, and I was doing youth work in a suburban village, very touching. The Neapolitans were very warm and demanding, at the same time very boisterous and cheerful, joyful, and the Christian sensuality, the way of enjoying life. And of course the third, slum work. I mean, we're working in what is called Rione di Traiano. It's a poor area. I realized, though I knew Hebrew language, I realized something else, that even if somebody doesn't know Hebrew, if you know the language of the oppressed, those who are suffering, you know the Bible. That's the discovery I got. So while doing Hebrew in order to know the Bible, once I knew, more or less got into the rhythm of its the movement, the way the Bible develops, I realized that when I was serving the sick in the hospital, the very poor in that area, the suburban town, and also the simple rural youth, I began to see that if you know the language of the poor, the oppressed, you know to read the Bible. That conviction was already there at the seed of the later liberation theology. Though I didn't call it liberation, I realized this connection with the Bible and the poor. It was a book written by an oppressed class and expressing their victory with the God of the oppressed as a kind of a legacy for any group that is oppressed. So in my sermons in the slums, where they were not, some of them were not even catechized, neglected, so that we don't have to say what was before Vatican II and what was after Vatican II. Simply give the dose together. Response was enormous. So in this experience, already there was a seed of liberation theology, which I didn't know, didn't call it, but it was there. Actually, it was a kind of entrance into a bigger program. The other thing is, by final year, I was taken to a sanctuary called Our Lady of Sacramonte, where the poor, simple contadini, the rural people, come with their devotions to Our Lady. And there I was exposed to the popular religiosity of Italy. And Father Tufari, Paolo Tufari, Harvard-trained sociologist who was teaching us sociology, actually trained us to understand them and not throw away the theology that we, dogmatic theology, and learn the theology of the people. And that I'm very grateful to him, because he constantly told us not to judge, but to learn from the poor. Their simplicity, one of the things, and their familiarity with God. One of the things I learned most, that moment they come, they run to the statue of Our Lady, which is over the tabernacle, a platform, they go. And they talk to Our Lady as a kind of a very personal friend, telling all the stories of the whole year. This happened, that happened, that little girl is grown up, and that one has come of age, the other one is married, now all the stories. Then the other's dragging, now hurry up, it's my turn. Then he said, Mother, ask him to stop. And he talks, and that simply captured me. These people, the whole idea of Ignatian spirituality, familiarity with Jesus, friend, yeah, they had it. Who trained them? Of course, at the same time, the fact they opted Our Lady as them, they were looking for a woman God. That was evident. That was the other thing that came. Though the word feminism didn't come to my mind, these people want a God who is motherly, not a male God. It was very evident the way they were talking, speaking to them. And some of the very, very, very touching examples of, say, a woman coming and saying, Father, can I go outside to make my confession? I said, why? I don't want Our Lady to hear. I said, why? Don't worry. No, you have to go out. Otherwise, I said, no, Father, I had a problem with her, so I don't want her to hear. I said, don't worry, they're all talking to her. She's busy. I entered into their worldview without knowing. Then I realized I was believing in that kind of thing. It was a conversion, actually. He said, don't worry, he's very busy talking. You talk to me. He said, Father, because I asked the question, why did you take 15 years to make your Precitta Pasquale, make the confession, everything? 15 years? He said, 15 years I didn't come here. Then only he said, let's go somewhere else to talk. He said, why? He said, I had a Madonna. I had a small misunderstanding with him. And I said, what is it? See, Father, my sister was very ill. And from this age I was coming to the Madonna. So I left the sister to Madonna to look after. and came to see the Madonna. And I told the Madonna, see, my sister was ill, still I came to see you. You look after the sister. But Father, when I went home, sister was worse. Terrible. I told Madonna, no more. I won't come to you. And so I was a theologian and I was trying to explain to him, Signora, Madonna wants to tell you that, what you did was wrong. You should have looked after the sister. That's what he's telling you. Look after the sister. That is your duty, not coming for the thing. That's what her son taught us. So no, Father. You are a missionary. You don't know these things. You are a missionary. You see, I went to Madonna di Pompe, the other Madonna, and he cured her. So again, my theology. I told her, Signora, Madonna di Pompe, Madonna di Sacramento sono la stessa mamma di Gesù. Is the same mother of Jesus. No. You're a missionary, you don't know. You ask anybody. Madonna di Pompe è molto più brava di Madonna di Sacramento. The Pompe Madonna is smarter than this Madonna. So now, where do I go now? The localization of God. This idea of localization. God here does better than God there. This concept of rooting God. See, these are things that began to, this experience and several things, I can't mention all the experiences, but they were one better than the other. You see, and a sense of the type of vows they take. I began to reflect, especially in my Mariology at the time, to understand what does Mary mean. In fact, some of the things I developed about Mary later on, even in the latest book, Genesis, was actually the seed was there. To listen to the people of God, especially women. The way they understand God, when they deal with God. That was not what we were taught. These are the people who gave an alternative theology. While I was doing high dogma, I realized there is another theology you have to search for. Already when I was studying Sanskrit in Madras, first exposure to popular Hinduism. Because in philosophy we were taught all these high Upanishadic philosophy, which are all, in the high atmosphere, you see. Then when I did this text, poetry with my teacher, Hindu teacher, he said there is another Hinduism, a popular Hinduism where, take Krishna. The Aryans were saying they were white and they were looking down at the blacks. And they say, no, Krishna is black, God is black. Now this is theology. God is black, Krishna. That struck me, that was the answer to the whites who were looking down on the blacks. God is black. It's long before the black theologians started saying that, black. And then, of course, the idea that God is male and female, the whole lingam thing, and this concept of Shakti Vihina Shiva Shava, that means without the woman, God. Without the woman, without Shakti is feminine power, God is a corpse. Is a corpse. God lives with this power, Shakti, which is feminine. So I got a load of things that there was a bombardment of things coming in, and I didn't have the time to gather them together. It's after when I came here, I started studying for my doctorate, PhD, Buddhism, which was a highly speculative. Abhidharma is the most subtle form of Buddhist philosophy. My thesis was on that, and I was reading mostly Pali scripts. But at the same time, while doing my doctorate, I also got involved with slum work, with mostly Hindus, Muslims, Tamils in Dematagoda, where I saw their religion. I now kept in touch with their religion. I realized I saw it in my religion, I saw it in Hinduism in Madras. Then here I began to see what motivates them religion in the slums of Dematagoda. At that time I saw no racism. Tamil, Sinhalese, Buddhist. Poverty had equalized them. Poverty can make them one in a struggle. Those are the ideas that were coming. What I saw a bit of it in the slums, the poor areas in Europe now came interreligiously, because there are so many religions together and yet poverty. And at the same time I started working and visiting Buddhist families, especially mixed marriages, trying to look for a way of a common religious experience. So during this period, while I was working, I also realized there is something called popular Buddhism, which is different from what I am doctoring myself in. That was it. And so after I started Tulada, because they didn't give me enough time to study. I was busy with my doctorate, started working, I finished it 1.5 years, and then Vajis approved. But that was the time when he told me that this religion you cannot study from books. You have to go into the practice. And this kind of meta-psychology has introspection, not, as Vajis read, not analyzing a chap on the couch. This is introspection, and you have to go through that process. That's how I went and started meditating. So while doing this high theology, I felt the popular Buddhism was a missing point in me. Now I have got a taste for it. I did go to many temples, but and staying in Buddhist monasteries, I did all the things that was needed by a Buddhist layman. So some kind of, I could say, the participation in another religion to some extent. Yes, but then it was after I started Tulana, when I had the independence, which I didn't have. I was given carte blanche. I started traveling all over the island. That was the most discovery, or the greatest, everywhere. I went everywhere. I'll never forget this experience. There I discovered they began to question whether urbanization is a sign of civilization. In Arugambe, I spent about 5 days, where I found the fishermen, Christians, Muslims and Hindus meeting. And there was no poverty. Again, poverty, same job, had brought them to a dialogue which we cannot artificially create. Interreligious dialogue, like in the slums. Poverty, working together, struggling together is the way for interreligious dialogue, not these artificial meetings. So those are little seeds that experiences are coming in. This is how I grew, like a baby, grew in the environment. I began to see that I must look for this also in other parts. So each time I went to teach Manila, I went to an Asian country. Now I got many students in these countries, so I could arrange and get myself guided. So this way I had a little pulse of Asia and also of Sri Lanka. And then I started studying the revolutions of Asia. I was keen. And I found that most of them, even some of the Indian ones, it is the cosmic religiosity. Because it is this worldly that could struggle and fight. I realized the metacosmic ones can escape into the other. These people are very down to the earth. And I said, this is what theology is lacking. So, Italian one, India, and now this, and this study of revolutions. So I began to be, especially in Chinese history, I saw that in Vietnam, all these countries. And this is how the seed of liberation theology was growing. And that's how it all happened, that this synthesis came. Then I began also to, after reading at least 3 scriptures, in from Jains, Hindu, Buddhist, and Christian. At least 4 major scriptures I was familiar with. So then also I began to see what do scriptures mean for a theologian, the written word. So I picked up this Panika's word. He never developed it. Panika's simply throws ideas. Sometimes he simply said that we have a primordial experience of liberation which originates a religion, and there is a collective memory. He didn't use the word collective memory. This is a memory of it. And there is a interpretation of that memory. I developed the rest, that there's a written and unwritten memory, and that interpretation can be of so many levels. So when I saw the popular religiosity, I saw it is an interpretation down to the earth. Then there is a political Buddhism, there is a political Christianity of a different type. Two types, one coming from below, one fitting into political systems. Then I revisited 1971 insurrection, the rural youth and the urban youth. The other one is oral. I realized the power of orality, that when you write something gets stuck, that before you write there must be oral transmission. This was a great discovery, and so all my theological development, clarifications came through teaching. It is amazing, especially teaching Buddhist Christian groups. We had also Hindu estate laborers in some of them. What I found was that they asked questions that I never raised in our theological. Like for instance, when I spoke about the God of the oppressed and with Buddhist Christian scriptures, several Buddhists got up and said, then your God lives only till there are poor. Gods need the poor to be God. Now that was a first class objection. Never heard anywhere. Never heard anywhere. I couldn't answer. I said, I'll think about it. So the oral transmission, out of the babe's mouth, you get these questions. And then I had worked with, workers, trade union groups. I traveled about all over the country, talking and learning from the people, and began to clarify my ideas. Writing came as a kind of a communication to the universal church in a European language. But it was a vernacular communication that is the basis for me. That is the methodology: oral transmission and vernacular. Otherwise, theology is not Asian. I invented a new vocabulary for the church from this experience. The words we use today are simply misleading. On the word, like for instance, anamnesis. In 1966, because I had to speak to mixed groups about this idea of remembrance, zakar in Hebrew, I invented the parismarane. It's a word. Now today is used in all theological books in Sinhalese. It is 66 I invented it. Then I retranslated the Our Father in such a way that a Buddhist could say it in front of the Buddha. In the language, and finally I gave it to Walpola Rahulathera. I said, can you say this before the Buddha as a Buddhist? You can only express your desire. Benedictative mood, we call it. Let that happen, let this happen. So our Father also, we said, may you. So I put it in that way. I read it for a long time. This is the Lord's Prayer, no? Recognized it. Then I said, I want to know whether you can say it. He said, yes, I can. Then I used, sure. So most mixed marriages, Buddhist, Christian, I laminate this, and after the sermon I say, and after their marriage they say the Our Father together. And then I give laminated copy. I ask the husband to put it in this pocket. Start every night, because other religions can pray to God, they can't. We had a seminar on mixed marriage in 1976. that also had a deep effect on the Vatican. So Monsignor Rossano, the non-Christian secretariat, he was a good friend. We were teaching together in Gregorian. So he used to come, whenever he came, he used to come and speak. He saw the documents of that dialogue that we had. And we realized that there is a great injustice done to the non-Christian partner in the way the questions are put. That there was a change. So Rossano has approached the sacrament and worship community. So you see, we realized there are ways of doing things, that what we do here has repercussions elsewhere. So publication in English was important to communicate to the universal church, but our work has to be in Sri Lanka. So that is the methodology which I used, and that is the one I recommend to all. And that is why I was very happy about the Sinhala Theology, the Tamil Theologies, where I taught also some time back. And that we teach in English because we want a Roman degree, but we can have in vernacular. So we started that then in a kind of an experimental way, Tarsi and I, with scripture lessons, all in Sinhalese. And then later on, I started in Tulana, as I'm still continuing it, theology with interreligious dialogue and ecumenism. That's the new thing. Ecumenism and interreligious dialogue and work for justice, these were in the air during the Vatican II, during the Council. When we were studying, we were already tuned in for this kind of thing. So when I came back to Sri Lanka in 1966 to begin my doctoral studies in Buddhism under the Buddhist monks, during this time I came to realize there are two types of ecumenism. And for Asia, we have to choose between the two. What I call inter-church or inter-ecclesial ecumenism and trans-ecclesial ecumenism. Now, what we had to do in Sri Lanka is trans-ecclesial ecumenism. That's what we started doing. It just happened, and that is what we promote. Inter-ecclesial ecumenism is when churches face each other and try to solve their internal problems. Like, for instance, we have problems like Eucharist, how do you understand? Episcopate and Presbyterate, devotion to Mary, the role of the Pope, scripture and tradition. These are issues that the churches are struggling with. So official or unofficial types of inter-ecclesial ecumenism is taking place even today. And in Sri Lanka, there was an attempt, the hierarchy wanted to do it, failed. There is also unofficial inter-church ecumenism. Unofficially, people getting together and discussing these internal issues. For instance, we had Giuseppe Ciampa, a great Jesuit, and Basil Jackson of the Methodist Church. They started what they call ecumenical conversations every year. They met together, unofficially, but inter-church, began to have problems of how to, all these issues that are dividing the church. But what we were experiencing in Asia is what I call trans-ecclesial. That is, we don't face each other. Churches don't, it's a luxury which we cannot afford in Asia. We come together and face the Asian reality. We don't face each other as in the traditional ecumenism. We meet across the church. That's why I call trans-ecclesial. We meet together and face issues. Interreligious dialogue. That's how we started working. The journal Dialogue came, and Lynn and I, we worked together, and with Soma Pereira, Methodist, Anglicans, we were all, Bishop Lakshman, we were one in facing the reality of the country and Asia. So this trans-ecclesial ecumenism started taking place. We didn't force it. It was a kind of an option that came, and we walked into it. There are many examples we can give. The Christians movement for socialism, I forget the exact word, started by imaging Paul Caspers of the Catholic Church Johan Devan of the Anglican Church, and Reggie Sirivardhana, a Marxist theoretician. We were not bothered about church unity. We were bothered about the questions that the churches are commonly asked. Unless we get together to answer these questions, we can't come together. So in Asia, we are very clear, ecumenism is based on our responding to what God is challenging us today. So one area was, when I was doing doctorate, I still remember Reverend Lindy Silva. He was already working on dialogue. He came to see me and said, let's work together. So I started going to his center, and I took part in all the events. We forgot we are Methodists and Roman Catholics. We were called by Christ to respond to certain problems. One was the how can I say, there's a certain amount of grievances that Buddhists had against Christian missionaries. We had to answer them. So he had a little journal called Dialogue. So I contributed to it. That is how I began. Then I suggested to him, we must have a better organized one with regularity so that people can expect it. The new series show the ecumenical collaboration in Buddhist Christian dialogue. Then we got Premavardhana from the Baptist Church and Anglicans. It was we don't know, we never thought of our Christian identity, in a sense, individual identity. We already started thinking of a Christian church, ecumenical church, face to face with the Asian reality. That is how many things came out, Christians together. We had a much better ecumenism than the other type of thing, because we worked together. And we shared sometimes the Eucharist, the Word of God, as it came, so that there was no officialdom in it. It was, we can say, the Spirit was moving us. Christian Workers Fellowship began as, I think, one of these trans-ecclesial ecumenism, because all the churches met together to answer the problem of the worker. And under the title, Christ the Worker. Even Marxists were ready to work with a God who is a worker. That was the genius of the Christian Workers Fellowship, to present Christ the Worker. And therefore, Christ did not become a threat to the workers. So this was a huge event, and we had readings from Buddhist scriptures, we had Hindu dances and readings, Christian readings. We celebrated the Word of God in all religions. Why? As Christians getting together. This is a unique ecumenical event. Then also, at least in Tulana, we don't make a distinction between fundamentalists and mainline churches. These Christians also, are part of Christ. We must know, if we can dialogue with Buddhists, we must be able to dialogue with Christians. So we cater also for so-called, what I would call the Evangelical Alliance. Now, in such situations, we meet. I gave twice I gave the main sermon for their ecumenical Pentecostal rally. We get a lot of these evangelical Christians here. And as for the evangelical seminary in Kohuvala, we are working with them. Then also, we are working with the ethnic issue, which is a big issue. How do we do it? The Methodist Church has two groups that are working on it. We work ecumenically with them, not independently. So their group comes here, we collaborate with them. So it is translational ecumenism, responding to the burning question of today. We, from the beginning, we entertained in this center people from the Tamil region for studies, for various things. So when they came, it was during the war. For their protection, I always went to the police, I take full responsibility for this person. And I covered for them. And we had a lot of these, I don't want to mention names, but a lot of them came. So obviously it was a risk because news spread naturally that there are Tamils coming here. So there was a raid. One night at 2 p.m., 2 a.m., jeep came, they jumped over the gate with guns. They came here, they came to the factory. They were all around me. And here I learnt a lesson. Never have a victim complex even if you have a victim. The problem with us Sinhalese is we have been victims. Now we have acquired a victim complex, then we become victimizers. I appeal to the Tamils the same thing. Don't have a victim complex. For me, when they came, instead of having a victim complex, I felt these soldiers are victims of a system. I had pity on them. I smiled. I don't know what happened. Now, this is actually a psychological experience. They saw me, they dropped the guns, they sat down. I said, go raid. Whether they are, all the doors are open. Go and raid the place. They didn't. They didn't raid the place. They came for that, they didn't. I want to give you this as an example of the risks we take, and at the same time that the never work but without a victim complex. This is the way we still work. For instance, once a police officer came, he immediately said, I hear there is a politician coming tomorrow, can I come to give protection? He was too naive, he didn't know how to present himself. So actually there is one group, when it comes, some or other they know. Why? Because they are sort of a leftists and radicals. So we address them also. So we said no need, because we never bring politicians here. We work with people. And of course he didn't come. He now and then drops in to see what is happening. And the third incident was, there are many incidents, just to exemplify the risks we take without a victim complex, so that we are free people. We do things because God wants us to do this. That was suddenly the CID or police, I don't know, they came to the shop in front and asked the man in charge, what is happening in this NGO? He said, what nonsense, this is not an NGO, this is a Vidyapita. Because he has seen the University of Kalani, a bus coming here with students for seminars which I conduct. Students, monks come here to consult the library. So it is a mini university. So he made this word Vidyapita, which is a symbol for a mini university. So they were taken aback. So in other words, the message given also to the village. So they came. So I went and said, hello. Say, what are you doing? He said, come, I'll show you. I took you to the library. Showed him the Hebrew Bible. He was perfect. What is this? I said, this is our scriptures. This is what they are doing. We are studying scriptures. We are enlightening people about and Greek. Then I took him to the next library and showed the Pali text, the Sanskrit text. This is what we are doing. We are studying these religions. We are doing research. We are publishing. We show the articles, my name, the Pali text that we are doing. And so Sanskrit text. I don't know what happened to them. They left. Then also we have a boutique close by a little restaurant. Sometimes the CID comes and stays there and they phone us. We know it is there. Why they do? The question is, why do Jaffna people come here? Our question is, why can't they come here? If you want that the country should not be divided, then anybody should go anywhere. So they have a right. You are asking us to divide the country. They can be only in Jaffna. They can't come here. So these are the stupid ideas some of the people in the forces also have. This is very clear. So we appeal. They also should be enlightened. Anyway, the work goes on. We still go on. And especially we have the one of the most controversial things would be our memorial wall. You find it is illegal to commemorate tigers because they are enemies. In this we have the tigers as well as certain people the tigers killed among the Sinhalese. And you have people whom Tamils don't like, and we have people, Buddhist monks, and so on. But for us, this is one country. If we are accused of dividing. We are accused of our work is interpreted as dividing them. Just the opposite. We want to unite them. This is what we are doing. They are dividing by saying you can't commemorate. These are our people. Tamils and Sinhalese fought. This is a civil war within the same nation, within the same people. Okay. And so they died. They are our people. So we teach those who come for our seminars to go there and light a candle and remember all those who have died. These are all human beings. We are our enemies or not. We remember them. They are dead now. This way we sometimes start our sessions with this little experience. Of course, we don't put Prabhakaran. Reason is, most Tamils who come here, he is immortal. He has not died. So we can't put him among the dead. But there is everybody else there. I think this is a symbolic locus of injecting into the people, into their subconscious. This is one country, and we fought each other. All our children, we are not going to taboo any group. We love all. It's difficult, but we try. And it goes. And there are people who have told me, Father, I have started thinking in a different way today. I was first sent to London for PhD. On my way, I met Etienne Lamotte, famous priest Buddhologist, whom Venerable Rahula respected as his teacher for Tibetan and Chinese Buddhism. And they were very good friends. Father Dejiv, also an Indologist and my spiritual father, I contacted him in Belgium and we went to meet for a little advice. And I said my thesis is on mindfulness consciousness in Buddhist scriptures and in Christian scriptures. I said I can handle the original languages of the scriptures, so I think I want to do something. And Lamotte simply shocked me with a question. How do you compare what you don't know with what you know? Or what you know with what you don't know? He said, forget your Christianity. You must immerse, il faut plonger, he said in French. You must plunge into the Buddhism and get something out of it. Now, then Father Dejiv, my spiritual father, said, see, this is a good advice. This is how you must begin interreligious dialogue. Forget your religion. Go deep into it. And he's a Catholic priest, advising another Catholic priest. So this led me to the question that unless you enter into the core of the other religions, you are not qualified to dialogue with it. This is very difficult. But then, with the carte blanche I got from Crowther, I didn't care. I went anywhere, I did anything. Things that would have been taboo those days, going to the temples, living there, worshipping, working everything like a Buddhist, and meditation under the presence of others, humbling yourself before. So that words of Lamotte, plunging, became for me a reality and also a methodology. There's no other way to learn the other unless you enter into the other, into the depths of the other. So this became my great methodology for interreligious dialogue. I was born into a very Roman Catholic conservative family. Conservative even by pre-Vatican II standards. It's a lot of discipline, very strict in every way. And 12 children. We had a family life that was organized, disciplined. But there was a redeeming factor that we had a lot of art and sports, which was a source of relaxation. So there was sculpture and painting from one side and music from the other. That art humanized us. So all the religious taboos and overly disciplined religious upbringing had this other side, and also sports. So that's how I developed the idea, the humanizing elements in education. Actually came as a reflection of my own, where religion, art and sports as three ingredients of humanism. My parents built a top-class library at home. We read a lot. We really read a lot, and every month there were new books coming in. They fed us. So that actually it was an Ignatian principle later, that whatever the libraries must be full, and any amount of money should be spent for libraries, so that people have a source of knowledge. So we had that principle at home. So we didn't suffer much. Our religious aspect of our life didn't wound us, hurt us because of this balance. So that is the home. But outside the home, if I have to thank anybody after God, I would thank a Polish priest, a Monsignor called Zaleski. He was the apostolic nuncio for India, Burma and Ceylon. He fell in love with Sri Lanka, called it Ceylon then. And he wanted a papal seminary for all these three countries, and he is determined to have it here. So I started in Kandy, my hometown, and built the seminary in Ampitia, my village, just close to my house. I lived just at the foot of that hill. So I was able to watch what was happening there in the seminary. Zaleski went around the whole of India looking for a religious congregation to start the seminary. And he picked up the Belgian Jesuits of northeast India. They came and they did their job. They were all giants. That is where my vocation was born. I can never take away from my memory the influence such people had. And I can understand why this Polish Monsignor brought these Jesuits and not the others. First of all, they were brilliant professors, but they were very human. Father Anko, the rector, was known to be a superior, a born superior. Human, understanding, and always looking for something good in people. So I didn't know he was such a busy man. I remember as a boy of 9 or 10, knock at his door. And always, come in, Aloysius. That's what I heard. Only late I realized that he was giving up his game of tennis every evening for a little child. Now, I didn't realize it then. As I became a Jesuit, I realized what kind of Jesuit I have to be. He never let me feel he was tired. Asking questions, listening, eyes, bulging, with surprise. I was made to feel very happy. I mean, he was such an active listener that I felt in a big family where you quarrel the whole time. Imagine somebody, an elderly person, listening to you, making you feel important, recognized. That's already something that developed my personality. I didn't have any complex. I was listened to, It's in me now. I never say I'm too busy for anybody who comes for a difficulty. So these are the men that influenced me. Then as I grew to about 12, 13, I started learning Latin. Because I thought to be a priest, now I had this vocation growing thanks to this influence, And also my elder brother also joined the seminary. And this, I want to be like them. So it was an unconscious attraction. So I went and asked Father Digi. He said, you have to learn Latin if you want to be a priest. So I said, we don't teach Latin here. I will teach you, he said. And within 1 year or 2, I had finished several books. And I was reading the New Testament and the Imitation of Christ in Latin without any dictionary or anything. Vocabulary was good. His training was so thorough. Then my father got a little panicky. I'm going towards that was the time of independence. Though he was headmaster of English school, he had this idea of not neglecting the vernacular. So he brought a ex-Buddhist monk and taught me Pali simultaneously. So by the time I was 14 and I went to Gaul to study with the Jesuits, I was ready to take Pali and Latin. Without knowing, I was trained in both the Western and the Eastern. Then it's a matter of Greek and Sanskrit that came afterwards as a Jesuit. And I was, without my knowing, in the Indological line, though that was not what I desired. So then came my training in the society, still pre-Vatican II in India. Philosophy, Western philosophy, ancient and modern philosophy, Indian philosophy. And after each course I wrote a textbook in Latin. I thought this is what I am going to teach. Philosophia perennis, this was supposed to be the eternal philosophy, unchangeable for the whole world. But that shows how my mind worked in philosophy and wanted to be a teacher of philosophy. And I was fascinated by this thing. But there was something that happened parallelly. That is that at the age of 18, I stopped reading novels. My last novel was Agatha Christie's 3-Act Tragedy. I threw it away, started reading history. And I got this interest in seeing parallels in history. Later on, when I took my A-level, before I joined the society, I had to study the history of India from Mohenjo-daro up to the Mughals. So then history of philosophy, Western philosophy. I was mad. I was reading every book I got. When I therefore started theology with Vatican II, ended with Vatican II, there was this return to the sources. So I went back to scripture. That is where I started studying scripture under Porupshan, and also history. I started history of theology, Kongas, history of this, history of that. When I started doing my doctorate in Buddhism, history of China, history of Asia. Somehow or other, I realized history is the answer, not philosophy, because Bible is about history of salvation, history of a people in which God gets involved, so that we know how to get involved in our history with God's word revealed there. Now this is the theology that came out, once I realized philosophy doesn't help, is not the ancilla theology, the handmaid of theology, but it's history. And with that I really mastered the history of Asia and history of revolution, history of cultures, history of languages, history, and that was what ultimately led me to where I am today. Being a Jesuit, of course, is the enthusiasm that these Jesuits generated in me. I still remember, I didn't know the difference between the Jesuits and diocesan priests. There was one of the first Sinhalese priests, Father Peter de Silva. He was our parish priest. And I remember I used to go with him on apostolic journeys. I was about 11, 12, to remote places where he was going, not because nobody was going. He was a real pastor. He went to the scattered sheep, So I was in the church also, not only in the seminary. I was helping the parish priest. I was getting up at 5 in the morning. My father, 5:30 I was reading the Angelus, prepare the place for Mass, and also start the hymns, because those days pre-Vatican II, Mass was in Latin. We sang hymns, you see. And I was with him. So whenever he went, he said, "Aloysius, come, we are going on such a journey," I was to accompany. You see, for me, he was my hero. So when I was asked by Father Cardinal, "What do you want to be, a Jesuit or a diocesan priest?" I showed Father Peter, I want to be like him. You see, he's a Jesuit. That's how I came to know the difference between Jesuit. Jesuit is a person who works, who is at the service of people. Father Lambo in the hospital, and people ready to accept children. This was the Jesuit. And when I joined the society, I realized Ignatius had all these things, serving children. Rudes pueros, that is poor rural children. You have to be serving them is one of the obligations. We take a vow, which we hardly keep, vow for children. So all these things later, even my involvement with children was very, very, very natural. It was in me to be with children. So even in the slums in Naples also, I was very much with young people and children. So the Jesuit life came easy where service was concerned. I grasped that part. But I joined the society at a time when it was still semi-monastic. So I must say, I was a little, if these Jesuits did not train me for an apostolic spirituality, I would have become also very monastic. But I had a conflict between the Jesuit formation as it was and what I received from these Jesuits, because they were different. They didn't fit into the other models. Later on, because of that, I went to the extent of studying the Belgian Jesuits. And I found that all the other groups, after the suppression, went back in search of their properties to the past. Belgians refused. They looked to the future, went forward. I realized they were a special group. What I saw in them, what I would say, formed, there was a little conflict. So till GC 31, which happened when I was in theology, and it made us again an apostolic order, demonasticized the congregation. I felt at home for the first time and said, my heavens, now I know what I was looking for. This is Jesuit life, not what you were formed. So from that on I was at ease. Then of course the Jesuit formation, which is an integral formation, and my study of Ignatius, history of the society, again history, my hobby, one after the other. I realized how we became monastic, and why it became, who did it, and what Arupe did by making us again an apostolic congregation where you are in touch with God while you are in action. You see? And I discovered the biblical basis of Ignatian spirituality, the word, action, kerygma. All this I discovered from the Bible, partly because I got it spiritually. And then, and also going back to my childhood memory with the seeds that were growing inside. So Jesuit life became so service-oriented for me that in our province there was a lot of tension. I was guided by Father Crowther, who took part in JC 31. So he encouraged me. I always consulted him. It was during that time I wrote the book Mysticism on Service, as a kind of a thing to put out, this is the real thing, not what they are giving. And some of the superiors misunderstood me as a kind of a secular man, not religious enough, actually not monastic enough in their mind, not religious enough. It was a bit of a struggle to show this is Jesuit spirituality. It took a long time. So there was a lot of things, so that even when I started Tulana, the young juniors are not allowed to go to the place. It's too secular. This is the thing. Then I began to see what Pope Francis now speaks of. That Jesuit Christian life, is religious life, is a table with 4 legs. If one leg is missing, it can fall. One leg is personal spiritual life, prayer life. One leg is community life. The third leg is study. 4th leg is apostolate. He says these must not be simply successively, but simultaneous. You should be able to live all together. So now I feel at home that service, prayer, study, and community go together. And it's now part of me. The courses I give to religious seminars, first course is on integration, not to be divided into four, how you can easily use all the four things together. So that is a typical Ignatian vision, which I acquired unconsciously through these fathers, and more consciously after GC 31, with a period of uneasiness, conflict. And then, of course, today I am communicating this to many religious and the Jesuit novices who come. Constantly I have a way of bombarding them with this four things integration. So that's how the liberation theology of Asia, or Asian theology of liberation, had its seed as well as its growth and the flowering. Since after that it was a question of spreading, strengthening, and how shall I say, emphasizing various aspects according to the needs of the time and needs of the social circumstances. And Tulana was actually the cradle of it. Tulana was a province project that had a long prehistory. That is, the Colombo community to which I belonged and where I did a lot of apostolate for 9 years was also the provincial's house. And we had very creative people like Father Catalano and many others who were questioning the structure of the community. We discussed whether this kind of a inward-looking community which didn't accommodate the servants into the so-called servants, minor staff, visitors, lay people, non-Jesuits, especially lay people and women into the community, even those who worked with us. So we were discussing this a lot in the community. Not everybody agreed, but it was in the air. So when the moment came to open the Tulana community, the provincial of the time, of course, inspired and backed by the consultants, decided that I should be given a little freedom to create something new, not to repeat the existing structures. So the mandate very clearly say, we have no model to go by, just play by ear, find out. So I got the carte blanche. Actually, this vision of my superiors, especially Father Moran and Father Crowther, before Father Pernuela, had already discussed with the assistant generals of the East Asian Assistancy and the Southern Assistancy, and with Father Arupe. And I was chosen as a kind of a person who should give to the Universal Church, through the Jesuits, something from Asia. So I was to be a kind of an Indologist theologian, teaching in the universities. Only thing is, I was supposed to be in Rome. So this was a little contradictory, because I felt if I had to give something from Asia to the Universal Church, I should be in Asia. If this is the vision that my superiors had, then I felt I should be in Asia, operate from here. So after a period of teaching in Rome, 72, 73, when I came back, I proposed the idea of Tulana. That's how it happened. They took 1 year of discernment, and Father Beiser was one who pushed it most. And so Father Pernuela gave this written mandate. And they were all asking him, so give us a model, give us a new model. So I began in 1974 in a 2-roomed house with a cook who happened to be the co-founder, because he had a way of entertaining university students, and also was the cook, he was a gardener, and he had a good PR with the village, and he gave the produce to the villagers. His father is a gift from the father. So the result was that I used to get food from everywhere, and I was accepted. And he and I sat at table and we discussed together. And he gave me a lot of insight into how to be a community in Sri Lanka. that was the beginning. A relationship with the people, with the parish. I was celebrating Mass there. Parish priest started coming. And the convent started supporting me. People began to give me food. So that was a first class beginning. Only thing is, we didn't have enough room for a community. Father Catalano, the man who was pushing me as a good friend, came and stayed a couple of weeks with me just to encourage me and telling me, don't repeat, start something new. This is the time for it. So then I had a chance of shifting to a bigger space and make it intercongregational. We had sisters from 2 congregations, an oblate and Maris brother, and several lay people. And we had every day 7:30 Mass, and we had a board. Anybody who comes during this time, please join the Mass, or if it is after 7, please wait till we finish. And we got people coming, and we had even a couple of Buddhist monks joining the Mass. And the Mass was very oriental, and we had a first class recreation because we didn't have TV at the time. We talked together a lot, and by evening we were at home, and morning we went out, and the community, the Tulana community, came to be known internationally because students started coming. I started teaching abroad, and this was going on. That is how it happened. And we also from the beginning had this sense of hospitality, that anybody who came and stayed, lay people stayed for days, weekends, and some people who couldn't study at home came and studied there, passed their exams, free. We never charged. There was no boarding fees. It was community and hospitality. So there are many characteristics. A community life without too many rules. Eucharist was our center because the concept at time we had was a usual thing of religious life. Because we came in the morning, we went out, came back, and by 5 we were there till 10. And I took a resolution long ago that I would earn my money as a Jesuit after the 1971 insurrection of the youth. Just before the insurrection, some of these university students who died shook me from my complacency. He was a chap who was a son of a person who was closing the gate for the railway crossing. And he has a little sister. And this man, thanks to free education, came to the university, but didn't have transport free, so he has to come all the way, and stayed empty stomach right through the day. And he was one of the members of this group who were planning the insurrection, which I didn't know. Our university is one of the cradles where I studied. So when I heard that he lives on a cup of tea and bread at home, I felt a little uneasy, and I said, can I share a meal with you? We have a lunch today in the canteen. He said, no, we don't take from Puja Paksha, people who are consecrated to work. That's puja, who are honored, respected religiously. I said, I don't belong to that category. I'm a priest. I'm there to serve the people, so it doesn't apply to me. Let's share. And I forced him and had a lunch together. Probably, I don't think he enjoyed a lunch like that. Then he asked me a question. When I paid the bill, from where do you get your money? I gave a wrong answer. God gave me. Then in my mind, I began to think, I said, this chap must be now cautious, intelligent fellow. This God gives him and not me. Moment there is class difference, you are preaching an unjust God. It came to me like a light. I said, no, the God I believed in has instructed that we share everything. And in fact, one of our saints said that if I have 10 rupees, you have nothing. I have already stolen 5 rupees from you. Then he asked, is this your own personal opinion, or is it the opinion of your church? So I said, well, it is the teaching of our scriptures, and it is what the church also teaches. Then he asked which church, and named all the private colleges in Colombo. This man from a rural school had come struggling, and after he gets the BA, the Colombo school chap becomes an executive with a car, and this man goes back to the village without anything. It was very clear. Do you belong? I said, well, yes and no, but Then I found I couldn't escape his thing. Then he finally told me, okay, come and follow our 5 lessons. Then you will understand what is happening in the country. I didn't. I didn't, but later, through one of their boys, I studied the 5 lessons and realized it was a charismatic movement. That's what we need in liberation theology. A charismatic. The 5 lessons ended by saying, okay, then what can I do for the movement? That is charismatic. It's not just philosophical knowledge or mathematical. That is, at the end, you are given with a situation where you have to respond personally, and the final question is, what shall I do? So I can do this, I'll give this to the community movement, I can this. Now this is what liberation movement should be, but not this theological dogmatic algebraic formulae, but something of a way that evokes action on the people. This scene fell on me. And then I decided I will never ask the procurator for money, I'll earn my living. That's why when I started Tulana, I earned my living. And I always have this boy on the cross with the face of Jesus, his face rather, in the face of, instead of the face of Jesus, from asking, Aloy, where do you get your money? And this boy died in Polonnaruwa during that ruthless destruction of the youth groups, killing of the youth groups by the army. So this was haunting me the whole time. So I earned a living. I remember Father Kiriatti telling my own sister, who was a spiritual daughter, your brother is the only one in this province who doesn't bother us for money. He runs the place entirely with his earnings. I was happy later on when I heard Father Kiriati. He never told me to the face that he was a man. He appreciated very much this idea, and he had expressed several times to others, I wish all Jesuits could do it. The ashram group regarded me as an ashram, though it's not exactly an ashram, as an ashram. And I was part of that group because I was a resource person for the monastic congresses starting in 73. Therefore, I belong to that group, but that group has died off, I think. So some people call it an ashram, but it's not exactly an ashram because an ashram, many ashrams are not concerned with the poor. It was mostly inward looking, whereas we were not that. So gradually we started changing the normal makeup of a community where Jesuits were employers and there were lay people who were employees. So the community that I built with this concept of poverty, of sharing, was such that those who joined me were volunteers who had the same mentality. They are not employees. Now there is a movement to start that. They go back to employee business. So the province has not taken the job, but going back rather than learning from a new experiment. So the mandate, province has to support me. I said no, I'll be independent. Now this didn't catch up. So the model didn't catch. They are used to the model that JVP boy questioned. That's the model still going on. So did I succeed in spreading such a model? Did I succeed in getting the province to know it? That's my failure. Our model is different. It was not money, it was love. That's what a community means. At last, what we dreamt of started happening. So the Tulana community started as a new way of operating as a Jesuit in a community which is not necessarily consisting of Jesuits, but with the Jesuit spirit. Lay or religious or priest, not necessarily Jesuit. So that's how our first composition was several religious and lay people. A community of equals, not that Jesuit superiority. We are another category, lay people are another. This is totally against Vatican II. The peoplehood of the laity is the constitution of the church. Church is the laity, and we are ministers who serve the laity. Therefore, we must have that servant leadership in a community. So we started it. It didn't catch up. On the contrary, it was looked as a kind of a freak. This is the future of religious community. This is the future. Spirit is given by the religious, but the community is lay people. You don't have to multiply Jesuits. It's a Jesuit, spiritual Jesuit community. How far it will go, whether it will be completely scrapped after me, it depends on God. I did my best. That's all. Samamange same samatai Devadana Devadanata Mayalinjayashri Mayalinjayashri Mayalinjayashri.
Sharon